Welcome back to another overview of the rarest birds in the Netherlands. Due to some delays in editing the videos for the video year list, the updates have been on hold for a while. But now, with the peak of autumn migration ahead of us, we're picking them up again. In this episode, the rarest birds from the month of July, following the standard concept. First, the newly discovered mega rarities, then the returning mega rarities, and finally, the other rarities. This month, only 4 to 5 new megas were found, which for July is of course not unusual. Among them were some debatable records, but also a couple of blockbusters that hadn't been twitchable for many years. The first was this white-tailed lapwing. On July 16th, the bird was discovered during a bird survey near Leeuwarden. Because the bird was deep inside restricted terrain, it was not reported at first. Things seemed to take a positive turn on the 22nd, when Mark Schuurman suddenly saw the bird flying in at the Keeg. He didn't immediately recognize it as a white-tailed lapwing, but instantly realized something rare had just flown through his scope. Luckily, Arjan Dwarshuis was sitting next to him and identified the bird right away. I say almost good news for many, because about an hour and a half later the bird took off, landed somewhere out of sight, and was unfortunately never seen again. The white-tailed lapwing is a migrant from Asia, and this was only the 11th record ever for the Netherlands. The other blockbuster was a long-legged buzzard, which turned up a day after the lapwing in a Groningen field. The bird was found by Paul Mason, but the sighting was reported rather late that day, so no one could look for it until the next morning. Early the following day, a few brave Groningen birders went searching but couldn't relocate it. That evening, some tried again, and this time the bird was visible, though far away, in the same field it had been seen the day before. The next morning it was still there, but unlike previous twitchable long-legged buzzards, which stayed for more than a week, this individual decided to fly off around midday, never to be seen again. Currently there is a long-legged buzzard just across the Ems in Germany, but it is unclear whether it's the same bird. In any case, this bird, native to southeastern Europe and further into Asia, represents the 11th record for the Netherlands. Furthermore, on July 30th, an unringed Ross's goose appeared among some greylegs, Canada geese and park geese near Breda. The bird was in good feather condition, showing no signs of captivity. Summer, however, is not the typical season for geese in the Netherlands, although, for example, an unringed, lesser white-fronted goose was also seen in Limburg. Intuitively, this feels like an escape, but a truly wild bird cannot be entirely ruled out. This individual now joins the long cDNA assessment list of Ross's geese records. Finally, we had yet another skopshaal. This time, unfortunately, not a twitchable one, but an individual that suddenly appeared in someone's backyard. The bird was once again found in the southern half of the country, in the province of North Brabant. This is at least the 4th record this year of this southern European migrant. The last species in this category is one that has never yet been accepted in the Netherlands, because a truly wild origin seems unlikely. We're talking about a pied crow that was seen along the highway in Gelderland, but was only reported afterwards. By then the bird was gone. This is now at least the 3rd record of an unringed individual of this species in just 6 years. In other Western European countries, this species has also been showing up more frequently in recent years. The idea that these birds might have arrived by ship is quite plausible, given the locations where they have been found. Other corvid species also make use of ships to spread. Now, the possibility of ship-assisted travel does not automatically rule out acceptance for a record, but it must be plausible that the species could also arrive here under its own power. At the moment, there is still too much doubt about that, which is why the species has so far not been accepted. In North Africa, however, the species has appeared in places where a natural crossing of the Sahara seems far more likely than a ship journey. The future will tell whether the pattern becomes clearer, and whether the species may eventually be accepted, and perhaps even retroactively. Then a number of rarity species that have been present for quite some time. For this pygmy cormorant, that's certainly the case. Including July, this bird has now been present for almost 8 months. How long it will stay is of course hard to say. Another wintering season, followed by finding a breeding site, is the most likely scenario. But the bird could also suddenly disappear at any moment. We'll keep following it. Another familiar guest is the lesser scaup at the Vogelmeer, which has once again stayed with us this summer. For those who are new here, the lesser scaup is a diving duck from North America, and it looks quite similar to the greater scaup, which occurs in both Europe and America. A greater scaup is noticeably larger than a tufted duck, but a lesser scaup is actually a bit smaller than a tufted duck, although the difference is minimal. A tufted duck has a dark back, whereas both scaup species and the pochard, for that matter, have a light back. So if you see a black and white duck no larger than a tufted duck with a pale back, the alarm bells should already be ringing. In addition, the lesser scaup usually shows a purple sheen on the head, rather than green, though that is not a very reliable feature. More useful is the pointed hindcrown, whereas the greater scaup's crown is rounded. Other important features, like the pattern of white and grey in the wing and the amount of black on the bill tip, I have already covered in detail in my other videos. We've now covered all the mega rare species, but of course there were also a few other rare birds worth mentioning. July, for example, is a good month for both rare golden plovers. Let's start with the American golden plover. A much visited individual was the one on Texel, the same bird I filmed from a video year list and which you now see here on screen. It is most likely the same bird that has been lingering around Texel for some time, being seen at various spots on the east side of the island. However, it was usually found near the bowl. Another bird was discovered at another classic rarity hotspot for golden plovers, the Punt van Rijden near the Breedbaardpolder. Here too the bird was often quite distant, but still a highlight for the birders coming through the north of the Netherlands in search of rare shorebirds. The Pacific golden plover showed up a bit more often. For example, one was seen on Texel, first at Wallenburg and later also at the Bol, where it stayed for quite a while. Unfortunately, often at a great distance, as you can see in these shots. This bird was therefore in the same area as the previously mentioned American golden plover. And at one point, all three species of golden plover were seen together, since there was also a flock of European golden plovers present. However, they didn't really move around together. The American golden plover was more often seen alone, while the Pacific bird tended to stay in the company of the European golden plovers. On Ameland, the first ever record for the island was found, but unfortunately it wasn't twitchable. In the Lauwersmeer area, there were even two individuals. On the same evening that the white-tailed lapwing was at IJsselmeerkeeg, later that evening a Pacific golden plover was discovered on the mudflats at the Bandpolder. A few days later, the same group that had earlier found the American golden plover at Punt van Rijden came across another Pacific golden plover at IJsselmeerkeeg, and in Westkapelle yet another Pacific golden plover was found among European ones. Another interesting shorebird was a Terex sandpiper, seen right on the Dutch-Belgian border. The bird stayed only until just after noon, before being chased south by a young peregrine falcon and was not seen again. As tradition goes, there were also sightings of white-rumped sandpipers. At the well-known high-tide roost at Westhoek, a bird was seen now and then. Often though, it was only in view so briefly that observers couldn't get photos. The first photo-documented sighting was on the very last day of the month, though the bird had already been present before that. On July 30th, a second white-rumped sandpiper was found in the Oudega wetlands. This bird was often either at a great distance or just behind the reed bed, making it hard to see. Here on screen you can see footage of that bird, which, when we were there, was also hiding just behind the reeds. By climbing on the very top of the lookout point, extending my tripod well above my head and using the tilting screen, I managed to capture it on video. Notice the slender shape, the greyish appearance, the distinct white eyebrow and the streaking on the flanks. Besides shorebirds, there were also other rarities to enjoy. At Vlissingen, a black guillemot was still present. The second calendar year bird feels right at home here, quietly molting its feathers. More and more fully grown primaries are becoming visible, while the beautiful black breeding plumage is already changing towards the white of winter plumage. I have now also seen this bird myself, for the year list challenge. It tends to hang around the piers, but since there are piers on both sides of the harbour, it sometimes takes a bit of driving around before you can enjoy close views. Black-winged kites are becoming less and less rare by the month, and July was no exception. 4 sightings were reported. One of those is uncertain, but of the other 3, one was documented with a photo from the Biesbos. Recently, I heard that the species is currently attempting to breed in Denmark. That means there is certainly a chance that in the coming years it will also attempt breeding in the Netherlands. Also, griffon vultures were still seen this month. Birds photographed included one over Texel on July 2nd and one in Zeeland on July 14th. In addition, there were several unconfirmed reports from different areas. This year too, July didn't pass without a sighting of a woodchat strike. From July 13th to 28th, one was present near Erp. Despite all the earlier cases this year, this again turned out to be a very popular bird with more than 200 reports submitted. I would find it amazing if in next year's breeding report from Zovon it turned out that the species did successfully breed somewhere this year, and that, like the redback shrike, it might be making a comeback in the Netherlands. Do you have any questions or requests about this series on the rarest birds in the Netherlands? If so, let me know in a comment under this video, and I hope to see you again next time. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.